If you're anything like me and you're into firearms and you're also into games and technology and virtual reality, then surely the thought has also crossed your mind, as it did mine, whether or not virtual reality could be used as a training tool to make you a better shooter. Well, Ace VR might be the solution that you've been looking for.
Stand by.
The guys over at Ace were kind enough to send me over one of their Arctis handsets. This is a version 2 model of their virtual reality controller and handset used in the Ace simulation. Ace is a training simulation. It looks an awful lot like a video game. It is certainly a hell of a lot of fun like a video game, but don't let that fool you. This is a downright serious training tool that'll make you a better shooter, whether you carry every day to protect yourself and your community, whether you're a competitor looking to get an edge at the next match, or whether you're a new shooter who's just trying to get more familiar with how to operate a gun safely and effectively. Full disclosure, as I said, Ace did send this over for me to check out. They also provided me with a free subscription to their service so I could give it a shot and also share my feedback with you guys. You can also get a free month off of the Ace membership if you choose to dive in by going over to their website, and when you check out, use the code PAIRS at checkout. All that being said, I am going to provide my honest feedback on the handset and what I think of it, where it really excels and where its shortcomings are that I know that there's room for improvement. This is going to be a somewhat thorough overview of both the hardware and the simulation itself. We'll start off by going over the hardware, comparing the handset to real-world firearms, where I think the ergonomics are similar and where they're different and what that means for the user. And then we'll dive into the actual software itself. We'll go piece by piece through every feature that is currently available in Ace, and then discuss a little bit of what you can expect in the months and the years to come. After that, I'll give you guys some basic information that might inform a purchase or no purchase decision on your end, and then we'll wrap things up. Hope you guys enjoy the video. I am Controlled Pairs, and this is Ace. So first things first, Ace is a training simulation. When you purchase it, it is a subscription model. Once you purchase that subscription, they send you out a box. Comes to your house, looks just like this. You open this guy up, and inside is the actual handset as well as everything you need to get started. Ace is available on both the MetaQuest 2 as well as the MetaQuest 3 headsets. There are no plans, so far as I know, for PC VR. That could be something they choose to add down the road, but it makes sense from an economic standpoint to add compatibility for the most ubiquitous headsets that are out there on the market right now. I should say also that Ace doesn't include a headset when you purchase it. The expectation is that you already have a headset, perhaps as a gamer, or you're choosing to purchase one so that you could gain access to the simulation. Now, in the box itself, you'll get the Arctis handset, and you'll get all the equipment that you need, all the hardware you need to either mount your MetaQuest 3 controller in the Arctis handset or the Quest 2 controller. Here I've got a Quest 3 controller in it. I've used Ace in both the MetaQuest 2 and the MetaQuest 3. I found both are quite comparable. The frame rate stays extremely high across both, and it feels really good. If you have a MetaQuest 3, because of the full color pass-through mixed reality option, you will get access to some features that you don't have access to on the MetaQuest 2, and that is simply because MetaQuest 2 doesn't have that full color pass-through option. We'll discuss more about the mixed reality stuff whenever we get into the features segment. Perhaps the most important thing to take a look at with respect to Ace is the ergonomics of the Arctis handset. When I first pulled this thing out of the box, I was extremely surprised at how hefty it is. It has the relative weight of an actual handgun. They must have some sort of weights in the grip. The whole thing looks to be injection molded. I don't see, there might be a couple 3D printed parts on here, but all in all, this thing is extremely durable, and I've got 25,000+ trigger pulls and just many hours so far in this thing, and I have had no issues with the hardware itself. One of my biggest questions and one of my biggest concerns when I got Ace was how well the hardware actually translated over to a real life skill. And one of the biggest things there is, of course, the trigger pull. And when you look at the Ace trigger, it actually has a little bit of take up to a wall. Then you have a crisp break with about 3.8 to 4.2 pounds or so, and you actually have a trigger reset that is nice and shallow. It feels very similar to a stock SIG or even a stock clock trigger. About the same weight, that same crisp break, and that same trigger reset. Trigger quality is extremely good. It's also extremely durable. And most importantly, I do believe that it translates over to real firearms. It's not going to match the exact weight of your firearm, which could be a concern for some folks. But as far as just training the mechanics, getting used to either slapping the trigger if you choose that method, or riding the edge of the trigger right at the wall, you can do both of those things perfectly fine in ACE, and I found a ton of translation of real skill over whenever I go back and I shoot live firearms. The mag release is located exactly where you expect when you push the button. It actually activates a lever on the other side, which depresses the grip button on the handset controller itself, which causes the magazine to fall free in the simulation. As you can see, just looking at the handset, it looks a heck of a lot like a SIG. There are no Glock variants in production right now over at ACE. I suspect that that could happen in the future. I am a Glock shooter myself. I have found no issues using the Arctis, and I found that, the same kind of grip angle on the SIG isn't markedly different in such a way as it would affect my performance on a Glock, and this is a perfectly satisfactory way to train in virtual reality. Now, once you actually get into the simulation, you can go into the settings and make sure that your Arctis handset is perfectly tuned to give you the most accurate and lifelike feel in the simulation itself. Because from an engineering standpoint, there's going to be some variation across the various Arctis handsets and some minor variations across each individual controller. When you dial into the settings, you can actually set the travel distance of your trigger to match the setting in the game, so that as soon as your trigger breaks, every single time, right as it breaks, you'll send around. The same can be said of the magazine release. By pushing it, you can see the actual travel distance of that mag release. To actually release the magazine, you can set that travel distance in the setting of the game to make sure that it feels as lifelike as possible and as much as your real training and carry tool as possible. Now let's talk about the simulation itself. Whenever you spawn into the ACE VR environment, you land in your hut right outside of the range. And your hut is kind of your base of operations, much like it would be at a traditional firearms range. In your hut, you've got access to all the multiplayer features that'll allow you to navigate and link up with your friends to shoot in multiplayer matches. You can also keep track of your total round count, which is why I can tell you guys I've shot somewhere around 25,000 rounds so far in this simulation. As of the production of this video, there's guys with a heck of a lot more than that already. You can also check out all of the different customizable options. You can choose from a variety of guns, whether it's an open class USPSA style gun. They've got a couple of staccato lookalikes, one of the smaller ones, as well as a full-size staccato. They've also added a Walther, which is pretty dang nice, and of course the SIG. And I suspect that more firearms will be added in the near future. You can also look at the currency that you have available to spend on additional customizable features and some of these gamified features that help you make your experience your own. You can spend some of that currency to unlock additional firearms. You can also spend it to unlock additional parts for your firearms. Right now, the key parts that you can unlock are the optics themselves. And they've got every optic that you could possibly imagine. You'll certainly be able to find something that either is identical or very similar to whatever you carry or you compete with on a day-to-day basis. I've been swapping between the Acro, the RMR, and the SRO. You can also shoot irons, and there's a ton of other options as well. Now let's dive into the various things that you can actually do in the simulation. ACE divides up their experience into 3 categories. They are skills, thrills, and drills. Skills are exactly what they sound like. It is an opportunity for you to improve your shooting by focusing on the fundamentals. Right now, the 2 skills that are available to train, one is target acquisition and the other one is accuracy. In the target acquisition drill, you'll start with a paper target about 10 yards in front of you. And then there's a bar that goes across the bottom that gives you a certain amount of time to put 2 rounds directly into that target before time elapses. Each time you successfully complete the drill, the time continues to decrease until it's really pushing you to the threshold of failure and forcing you to rapidly gain a clear sight picture or even that flash of the red dot and then quickly send a hammered pair at the target. I find that it's extremely valuable. It's essentially a virtual reality version of a drill called doubles, which forces you to send those 2 rounds accurately. And I really appreciate how well done and how simple it is in ACE. The other skill that's available is accuracy. Accuracy gives you a tiny little plate. It starts very close. You have to hit it 3 times. After you hit it 3 times, it'll back off and you'll have to hit it 3 additional times. Each time you hit it, it continues to back off. Once you miss, it comes closer. This can become extremely frustrating, extremely challenging, and also very rewarding once you push it out there a pretty good ways. What I would say with respect to the hardware and how the actual simulation performs is that everything is replicated much like in real life with the exception of recoil, of course. but it feels a heck of a lot like dry firing. So if you don't have a proper grip, if you aren't adding pressure with your support hand, if you aren't really paying attention to your trigger pull, you will move your sights just as you would in dry fire in the simulation. And so for that reason, there's a lot of one-to-one transfer over to the real world, and it's going to really force you to dial in those fundamentals, make sure you're executing a proper shot sequence each time you acquire a target and you pull the trigger. And it's extraordinarily valuable in that way. Now, the thrills portion of ACE is, well, thrilling. It's a lot of fun, and these are kind of like mini games. There's a couple of different options. One of them, you have to defend your little fort from zombies. They keep coming in waves faster and faster until they ultimately breach your little hut or your little shack, and then the drill terminates. Another one is called drones. These are quadcopters that spawn in at 360 degrees all around you with plates dangling underneath them, and they continue to come in different waves faster and faster until they approach your position and ultimately in the drill once they actually touch you. There's also an open range in this area. I think the open range is fantastic. It actually lets you interact with a shot timer, so you can run your own ridiculous drills if you want to, or set your own course of fire, or compete with your friends. The open range has a ton of different targets, everything from, you know, watermelons, pumpkins, whatever fruits laying around, as well as plate racks and Texas stars and IPSC targets, all at various ranges, and you can really do a heck of a lot with the open ranges. Some of the more interesting drills, however, are the mixed reality drills. Remember, these are only going to be available on the Quest 3 headset because that is the population that has access to full color pass-through in virtual reality. And the two mixed reality modes they have so far are a balloon drill that spawns balloons at you at 360 degrees. This is really kind of a test of their mixed reality capability, and it was the first one that they released. And I find it reasonably entertaining, but the really interesting one is a shoot no shoot drill. Basically, they take the spatial data from your Oculus headset and they spawn in both shoot and no-shoot targets, again at 360 degrees in your own space, and it continues to get faster and faster. And you can only miss 3 of the shoot targets, and if you hit any no-shoot targets at all, then the drill terminates and your score stops. The goal in all of these thrills is to continue doing it as long as possible and continue to try to push the limits of your own capabilities. Now, the drills portion of the ACE simulation is really the meat of the experience, and it's where I find myself spending the most of my time. Drills are exactly as they sound. It is dozens at this point, and more being added on a bi-weekly basis, it seems, of traditional USPSA, Steel Challenge, IDP style handgun drills. These are all set to a timer. You basically select the drill that you want to complete. You go stand in the starting area. The instructions for how to complete the drill will be directly in front of you. You understand the instructions. You grab your gun and you press a button on the controller to trigger the drill. When the buzzer goes off, you execute the drill. Once the drill is complete, it'll show you your score, and that's where things start to get interesting. Whenever it shows you your score, you actually see where you stack up on the leaderboard versus everyone else who has been completing the same drill. You can either conduct a practice run, which is just your usual kind of training style run, or you can spend some lead, which is one of the in-game currencies, to actually pay a price to compete against everybody else on the ranked leaderboard. And it's worth saying here that there's some extraordinarily talented shooters in the ACE community. Recently, I've been seeing a lot of professional shooters and, master level and grandmaster level USPSA competitors jumping into ACE. And it's interesting to see their skill from the real world translate over into ACE and really put you to the test. So whenever I manage to get on a leaderboard, it's extraordinarily satisfying, and I find myself just dumping tons and tons of time into these drills. It's also worth mentioning that in the drill section, they have recently added a feature called the series feature. A series is basically a match setting. It's going to take a bunch of these drills and require you to complete them in sequence without actually stopping and restarting any of the drills. This is a much higher stakes way of competing. I really, really like it. They're going to continue to add more of them, and it tests you over a period of time so that you can't just run the same drill 50,000 times trying to get on top of the leaderboard, because it forces you to perform through that entire series of drills. And if you jump in the series right now, you'll actually see that the first drill in that series is one from SHOT Show that they showed on the floor, where JJ Rakaza is sitting on the top of the leaderboard on the floor of SHOT Show. So you can jump into ACE and compete against quite literally the best shooters in the world, which I think is pretty dang incredible. But the big question with respect to ACE is, how valuable is it? Sure, it's fun. I enjoy doing it, but how well do these skills actually transfer over into a live fire shooting environment? And is there some value there? Will this make you a better shooter? I'm of the opinion that the answer to that question is yes. But before we dive into that, I think it's worth providing you just a little bit of background so I can add some credibility to my opinion here, because this is an area of interest that I'm very passionate about. I have over a decade of military experience. I commissioned as an infantry officer, and I spent about half of that decade, that first decade of service, in a special operations organization where firearms instruction and training was extremely important. And it was my job as an officer in that organization to make sure that the firearms skills and the firearms training was actually accomplishing our training objectives. I shoot quite a bit. I'm not a professional shooter. I'm not a high-level competitive shooter, but I do enjoy shooting. I probably shoot somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 handgun rounds per year, and I enjoy doing that quite a bit. And I am also a huge nerd, right? I make, video game videos on YouTube. I'm extremely interested in simulation, and I'm actually studying simulation at the graduate level right now, and specifically what types of models and simulations are valuable insofar as transferring from a simulation environment into a real-world environment. And so that's why things like ergonomics and one-to-one transfer and the fundamentals in the sim being able to transfer over into the real world are very important to me. Now, with all of that said, what is it about ACE that I think makes it effective? Well, the first is the frame rate in the real life feel. The biggest challenge in a lot of virtual reality games is that lag that you get whenever you're actually moving around the environment. ACE has chosen a mostly low poly approach. This means that it's not a resource intensive or an asset heavy digital environment, and so you get very, very high frame rates. It seems to be coded extremely efficiently, and so there's no lag input whenever you're transitioning from targets to targets. So it's very, very good in that way. So it's checked that box. Second, what can ACE actually be used to train for in a real environment? There's no recoil on the handgun. That's the biggest drawback in my estimate. However, I think it is extraordinarily good at helping a shooter learn to acquire a target and track a dot. It is going to force you to present the gun in such a way as that you're going to rapidly acquire your dot, rapidly acquire your sight picture, focus on the target, and engage quickly. In addition to that, it also is very good at helping you train the fundamentals of the actual shot sequence. It's going to force you to provide proper pressure with your support hand, proper pressure with your grip hand, and a proper entire shot sequence and trigger press. And if you mess up any of those fundamentals, you will 100% see it translate on the scoreboard, as is evidenced by the stratification of scores with the high-level professional competition shooters quickly rising to the top in ACE, and the rest of us plebes quickly sinking to the middle or worse. The third thing I think ACE is very good at helping shooters train is vision throughout a course of fire. We all know that you need to maintain target focus. You need to get your eyes out in front of the gun and acquire a target quickly as you physically transition the gun from one target to the next, so that you can quickly engage whenever you get there. ACE really forces you to execute that target focus, to use your eyes to get out in front of the gun and to quickly transition from target to target. I think vision specifically is probably the single greatest strength of ACE from a training perspective. Now, one thing that I thought was very interesting is that it also trains you on movement. Because ACE is a virtual environment, the locomotion is achieved typically through teleporting. So if you don't have a ton of space, you can move around the environment by just looking where you want to go, toggling the joystick on the controller, and it'll teleport you to that location. But if you're fortunate enough to have some garage space or a local training facility or a decent sized backyard, you can actually move around your environment and shoot. This means on those stages that require movement, stage planning and the efficiency of your movements comes into play. This is something that I struggle in quite a bit. I really need work on knowing exactly where I'm moving to, identifying that prior to the buzzer going off. As I'm moving, getting my eyes up to the target. As my eyes come up to the target, the gun's chasing my eyes up to the target, so that when I arrive in that firing position with a nice low center of gravity, I can quickly clear whatever obstacle is in the way and deliver accurate shots. ACE is extraordinarily powerful at that, and it's also just a very compelling way to show off the technology, because you can really see physically what the shooter is doing in the real world while also looking through their first-person perspective to see what they are doing in the simulation. So it's extraordinarily valuable in that regard. Now, what are some of the shortcomings of ACE? I've mentioned a few of them throughout, and I think it's fair to continue down that road. The first is obviously that right now there's only a SIG grip for the Arctis handset, which is unfortunate, but I do suspect that down the road, as ACE continues to grow in popularity, it is possible that the developers may choose to manufacture other grip styles for the ACE handset. Additionally, there's not a whole lot of holsters that fit the handset. What I've been told is that the T-Rex Arms Ragnarok SD, the holster that they built to carry a handgun with a suppressor attached to it, is a great solution for ACE. I don't own one of those, but I am looking to pick one up so that I can start training with a holster in ACE. And the other shortcoming that is worth mentioning is that right now, the simulation is not feature complete. There's still plenty to be added. The good news is that this is a service that is being provided, and it will be updated regularly. So we're gonna see more series style drills, more matches, more tournaments, better leaderboards, UI improvements, more customization, and who knows what other type of features. Something that a lot of us are really asking for is a range builder style feature and then mixed reality drills beyond those that are currently available. This would be pretty fantastic to be able to jump into mixed reality, build out your own mixed reality range, and then run it in your backyard. I think that's really where this technology is currently heading. And the other thing that's worth mentioning that a lot of folks have provided me personal feedback on, and it's also feedback that I've provided the developers, is that ACE is a subscription model. Now, for a very valid reason, that turns a lot of people away from it. After all, most of us are used to purchasing a video game for the Quest for 20 or 30 bucks. It's a one-time purchase and it's done forever. And I think that that is a fair criticism. What I would say though is that ACE is not just a game. In fact, it is a simulation. And more than that, it's a training tool and it's a subscription service because it's also a live service where they have to continue to pay the developers, they have to continue to run the company, and they're continuing to add features to it constantly. I think it's more fair to compare ACE to something like Laser Academy over at Mantis, or compare it to a fitness program like Softfleet or a CrossFit gym membership, or even an annual range fee at your local range. Because while it looks a lot like a video game, and it feels a lot like a video game, it is much more analogous to a training tool designed to make you a better shooter. Remember, if you are interested in purchasing ACE, you're by no means obligated to, but you are encouraged and welcome to use code PAIRS when you go purchase your ACE equipment. If you do that, you'll get a free month off of your membership. I'm also very eager for feedback on this. What do you guys think of ACE so far and everything you've seen in this video? Is this something that you're interested in? Is this subscription model going to turn you away from it to such an extent that you don't think you'll ever be able to experience? What sort of features do you think need to be added to make it an even better experience? I'm Controlled Pairs. This has been ACE. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.